Well, my name is Muralidharan. I teach at IIT Madras in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences. I have been teaching since 1988 here, but my entry into this campus was on, if I recollect, 12th August 1983 when I joined here as a PhD student in the same Department of Humanities and Social Sciences. So, right from then I have been living inside the campus except for a period of 4 months. So, today I am here to listen to Professor T.T. Narendran, who has lived here even much longer period from 1971 as a research scholar and later on as a faculty, and he was with the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences initially as part of the Industrial Management and Industrial Engineering division. Later on he became a professor and he was with the Department of Management. This particular conversation or conversation with him is part of a larger project of the Heritage Center called the Oral History of the Institute, as seen through the lives of many people who have lived here as a student, as a faculty in the campus or otherwise. So, today we are going to listen to Professor T.T. Narendran. I am delighted to be part of this heritage project on the oral history of IIT. We would like to listen to you, your journey in IIT, your story, shall we say, of your life over the last 40 years. Could you tell us something about what led you to enter into IIT life and how it progressed?
I'll perhaps begin with a brief background about myself. I reluctantly went for engineering at the College of Engineering, Guindy, which was then affiliated to Madras University. And those were days when we had 5 years of engineering, where the branch was decided after the first 2 years, based on our academic performance. I got into mechanical engineering as I wanted, but most of the time my heart was really not in it. Surprisingly, my final year I chose an elective industrial engineering, and that appealed to me a lot more. So, I got interested in industrial engineering and started looking for opportunities to study further, and that is when I found the industrial engineering program. I was a little late, I think, so I didn't even apply for MTech. I got into MS. As it turned out, I was the first ever MS student in the Department of Humanities.
In industrial engineering.
And the subject was industrial engineering.
The industrial management came later?
No, both of them existed.
Okay.
They were parallel. Because the history is that somewhere in the mid-60s there was a diploma IIT in industrial engineering. Later it became 2 full-fledged programs, MTech in industrial management and MTech in industrial engineering, that continued for about 10 years or more. And somewhere after 1979 or so that it became one program. Yeah.
So, which year was it when you joined?
71, to be precise, August 1971, I think 18th August, the date was when I checked in to IIT. I was asked to go to Kaveri Hostel, where the central office was the Chairman Council of Warden's office or whatever, and they gave me Kaveri Hostel itself, room number 52, ground floor, that also I remember. And it was only a few months after which I got a second floor room, and I stayed there for the rest of my, let's say, tenure as a student in IIT through MS and part of my PhD. And one of the accessories that came with me to my room was the Veena.
Okay.
And there used to be these inter-hostel cultural events. Of course, it was a very different format where each hostel would be given a 45-minute slot. The event would be spread over 3 days. The same set of judges would come and sit. Every hostel would put together a package of whatever talent it
This
had.
is the annual feature,
Yes.
that, hostel day or something.
So, whoever the student secretary came in search of me, seeing that I play the
You
video.
have a,
And it began, it was also interesting that in those days, 70s, before the advent of TV and all that, these events would attract a full OIT crowd.
oh,
And it possibly helped me, let's say, develop contacts with the student population, be recognized, etc. So that was on that side. Academically, of course, I must say that those were the early days when, including my guide in the department, people were not very sure as to what an MS student is supposed to do. So there was a little bit of, let's say,
experimenting with you in a way.
the other interesting part was there was no central computing facility. And, what existed then is unthinkable. Bullock cart age is what you can say.
No, but I think they had this 360 even then.
Nothing.
Oh,
Nothing was there.
in 71.
So all that we had was some kind of understanding with the College of Engineering Indy campus, where there was an IBM 1620 machine, 32K memory. Okay. And that was the only
But that's
facility.
also because of the way in which the computer industry
Through,
itself
through my
was.
guides, contacts and all of that, I was able to use that. Believe it or not, you can run a program and get an output once in a week. I would have to cycle to all the way there.
But you had to use the computer then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then the turning point was by about 1973 October, I think, the IIT computer got installed, IBM 370 bar 155, I think. It was a 512K memory, which was a grade higher than what existed in IISc Bangalore that had 256K memory. So after that, things improved. My research
I mean, you
speeded
didn't
up a
have to
little more. Yeah, I
Go
didn't
across
have,
the campus.
yes. And that facility existed through my PhD days also. That's what I worked with. The PC and all the next generation fast computing came much, much later. So I had to also contend with that. So today I am not surprised that my MS took 3 years at that time, because
Well, even now it takes roughly about 3 years. So
But-
you were ahead of time.
to be fair, the amount of work that you can do is much more in the same 3 years.
Right.
At that time, we could not have been so productive given the conditions then. Fine, that was. So,
What about your
the interesting part is, between my undergrad and my MS, for a couple of months I had gone to Wheels India factory as an intern. I wasn't too comfortable with the factory environment. But I put that behind me, I started doing my MS. Towards as I neared completion of my MS, I had fallen in love with this place, I guess. I didn't want to leave. So I told my guide that I want to do a PhD and I also want to be a faculty member here. In those days, inbreeding was not an issue because there were hardly any institutions within the country which could award a PhD degree.
Right.
And so that was made known to the other professors also. I still remember Professor R.K. Gupta advising me, why don't you take a break, work in the industry and come, that exposure is important.
Who was your master's supervisor?
Ramani, Professor Ramani was my supervisor, both for MS and for PhD. So the PhD interview was mere formality. And
That time, how many were recruited for PhD along with you?
Along with me, there was
Just two or
late
three.
Ramji Sampath,
Ah,
who also joined with me. Even during my MS, there was one more lady who joined, Meera Shivram. So, yeah, so my, let's say, decision to join PhD was more because I wanted to stay here
Yeah.
permanently, and by then I made up my mind that I want to be in the academic line. And then what happened was, in those days, master's degree was the minimum qualification for becoming a faculty, and the post was lecturer. So, 2 years into my PhD, my guide said, there is an advertisement, why don't you apply?
okay,
And he also said, who knows when you finish your PhD whether there will be a vacancy or not.
right.
So, I applied, I got in. So, I started teaching from, let's say, November 76, or in fact, in between for 2 months I was even a research associate with a project of my guide. The result was, once I got into teaching, preparation took a long time,
Right.
and my PhD also took a long time. And there were quite a few in my age group in various departments. All of us have this record of notoriously delayed PhDs. We have all taken 10 years in that
10
range.
years?
Yeah, 74 to 84. Because we weren't doing research all the time.
Luckily, there is no deadline for like we have now, 7
No,
years or 8 years.
Today things are far more streamlined. So, see, we have
But I
also,
think you required that flexibility.
we have grown with time, we have learned, we have evolved, we have become far more professional. But this was the situation prevailing at that time. But fine, the other interesting thing was, it was almost like yesterday I was a student and today I was a teacher. Suddenly
Just
pushed into the
a
class.
curiosity about your thesis evaluation. Was it the same as we had now, a synopsis, and it's
Yes,
sent out
yes.
to
The
3
same formalities.
examiners?
During my MS, the seminar talk was not a
Not-
formality,
yeah, right.
but I had given a seminar talk, not here, at the OR conference at IIT Kharagpur. So I did make one visit there.
Any thoughts on the reports you have received on your dissertation? What was it? Can you?
Don't remember
Okay.
much.
It was on OR.
But yeah, today going back, we would all be embarrassed to show our thesis because
Yeah,
the
that's
knowledge
always
level
the
has
case with anyone.
gone up so much that somebody might ask today, how did you award a degree for this? So
Absolutely.
that's how it, that is how knowledge evolves,
Yes,
that's how
yes.
knowledge grows.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
that's fine. Yeah. So
Early
the early years of
experience in
teaching,
teaching, yes.
yeah. No, as soon as I became a lecturer, I went out of campus. And then within my very first semester, the students in my class, to use their language, they started putting line. Sir, there is an assistant warden vacancy in our hostel, why don't you come?
Okay.
So some of the students who were keen on that, they spoke to the authorities concerned and made sure that I became their assistant warden. Tapti hostel was where I went in. So for 2 years,
You were there.
I was assistant warden in Tapti hostel, and it was fun. Lot of interaction with
So you would
students.
eat there? You would eat in Tapti?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I've eaten in Kaveri hostel also. In fact, food was much. This was another.
Like given
tip.
your food preferences,
All those were never a
Not-
problem.
then
And this also must be said. The first mess bill I paid in Kaveri hostel was 110 rupees. Today possibly the daily rate would be of that order or more.
yes, but I think it's a 90 rupees or something.
So, cost service, and a master's student got a stipend of 250 rupees, a doctoral student would get a stipend of 400 rupees. So, and it, for a 110 rupee mess bill, the 250 stipend was
Absolutely.
more fine. Times have changed. And then also there was water scarcity, I mean, off and on. I remember one year when monsoon failed totally. You had all
What
those
about the department then, composition of department, how big was it? This mix of industrial management along with the humanities, sort of the
when
culture.
I joined, it was possibly about 2/3 in the humanities and social sciences and 1/3 of the
Out of 15,
maybe about 20, 24, somewhere in that
20
range.
faculty. Oh, I see.
Around 20. And the north wing was mostly humanities. The south wing part was where primarily industrial engineering faculty were located. There were few who were in the industrial management side who also sat with the humanities people.
For the industrial engineering part, did you have any lab or workshop?
There was a lab. There was an
That was
industrial
also
engineering
on the
lab.
southern side.
Yeah, that was the last room.
Okay.
It is probably now gone to physics.
Physics.
Yes.
That's what
Mm.
physics is.
So those were there.
So how many MTech intakes used to be there?
It used to be 20 and 20,
20.
industrial engineering and industrial management.
Okay.
And when they merged it, they said 40. And over the next 20 years, yes, it went on, but gradually we realized that we weren't getting the best talent.
Which
And,
year it got wound up? The
when we decided to start the MBA, that was as late as 2001.
Oh, it was running till then?
Yeah.
No.
In fact, the first batch of MBA, when they were being interviewed, some of the outgoing MTech students were
Right.
around to help us
Right.
conduct the interviews.
Okay.
That also happened.
So about your teaching in particular, I have personally struggled a lot. How about your experience? Was it that natural to you, or you had to
It is
work?
it is actually a mix. It is varied with each subject. They asked me to teach a subject called Principles of Management.
What
Not
all
a
are-
subject that I was comfortable with, but I would prepare with the books, take notes, and then go to the class. But I seemed to manage quite well.
managed
I managed well.
the management.
That went well. I wanted to teach operations research, but the senior faculty were already taking
doing
that. So it didn't come to me in the first
Was
year.
it the course for the MTech or the BTech?
For the BTechs.
For the BTechs.
Then we must also remember there was nothing like a plan in those days. So unlike now, there was no announcement that these are the courses, these are the slots. There was no slot system. Timetable would be after reopening.
Right.
Teachers would be assigned after reopening. So you can be taken by surprise. So I was suddenly asked to take a subject called computer simulation. And at short notice, I was absolutely unprepared, and my first class was a disaster. And the
You had, a,
students
you had a
sitting-
formal introduction to that course in your.
I had,
you know,
I had done the subject,
but not as a teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and the students sitting in front of me were my friends earlier.
Okay.
Okay, I'd been with them in the same hostel, they were my juniors. So they also felt very sorry for me. But by the end of the semester, they said,
Managed.
you have.
Okay.
In fact, only the first class I had difficulty. After that, I think I came through. But this is not all. Couple of years down the line, in those days we had only one economics teacher, but economics was compulsory for all the undergrads in the second year. So we used to get a guest faculty member, and suddenly one of the directors said, no guest faculty member, ask your internal people to teach. And this course was forced on me.
Was it the same 420? HS 420, number was different.
Number was different.
Okay.
Was there a number at that time? I'm not even sure. I don't remember now. But all that I remember is this. I picked up this book, Microeconomics by Henderson and Quant.
Oh, that's a tough one.
But maths was the background I had, so
That's
I
why
tried
I'm
to
saying,
learn economics through mathematics.
That's a good book.
So what happened was, I took notes, I took the class, my students did not discover my ignorance of economics. And it went like that for a couple of years, by which time I think we got more faculty and I mercifully got out of it. Meanwhile, I got into operations research, industrial engineering, or production management was the name of the subject. But fine, I was comfortably settled in the subject areas that I knew. And thereafter it was quite comfortable. But the early years, all these turmoils was there, and you must remember that as a result of which I had no time to think of research, and my PhD was completely in the
all
back
these
burner.
things, definitely.
So
thankfully, there is no pressure from the supervisor also on that.
Now and then
front.
there was. It's not that the questions were asked, but fine. Thankfully, I got out of all of that.
What was the evaluation pattern? Teaching. Was it
those were
so
the
much
days
in your
when
lot in your
every
hand?
subject would have 3 periodical tests. There used to be 3 cycles of periodicals. The best 2 of them would be taken, absolute marking, and then there will be a final semester examination.
So periodical mean in class you give some problems and they solve individually.
Yeah, I mean it's not very different from the quizzes that you have now.
It's the same. Okay,
It's
just
a-
a longer. It's longer
Yeah.
period.
And it always was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, like that, 8 to 8:50. Those slots were reserved for conducting the periodical tests. And when I was assistant warden, this also used to happen. I was teaching my wards in class, and if there was a periodical test in my subject the next day, I would hardly get to sleep. Students would come in ones and twos and keep asking doubts. Some of them only asked doubts. Some of them also tried to see if they could get any clues on what will come in the question paper the next day. So I had to be extra smart not to let any of that happen. At the end of the semester, one of the students confessed, "Sir, we found that by not asking you anything about the test, we will have a better idea as to what is coming. If we ask you, you completely mislead us." But anyhow, being approachable and being able to help the student was a good experience.
When you joined, who were the faculty members? You said about 20 people were there, but some of the prominent ones, both in humanities and social sciences. And a related question later on, the Department of Management was created, I think, around 2006, 5 or 6. A brief history into what led to its formation. Could you throw some light?
Okay. When I joined, Professor R.K. Gupta was the head of the department. And then, if I remember right, he was the only professor. Then Dr. Anantharaman, V. Anantharaman was the associate professor, he is no more. There was one more professor, N.K. Datta was the other professor. He was a professor of industrial engineering. Unfortunately, within 6 months of my joining, he passed away. Professor N.K. Datta died of heart attack in January. I had joined in August. In fact, he had started teaching a subject for us in January, that semester. Unfortunately, he died prematurely. So, Professor Gupta and Datta were the professors at that time. Professor V. Anantharaman was the associate professor. Ramani was assistant professor. And then we had, I think, Arumugam was there in industrial engineering.
Jayashankar.
No, all of them came later. And the Professor L.V.L.N. Sharma was there. There used to be a gentleman called Asthana, psychology, behavioral sciences. He also died young. At the age of 33, he had died of a heart attack. And then V.S. Kumar
Yes.
was there, Professor Krishna Rao was there.
Okay.
Hamsa Leelavati was the economics faculty member at that time. Elizabeth Kurian was already there. Durga Prasad Rao. Durga Prasad Rao.
And then C. Ramachandran.
C. Ramachandran was there, of course, history.
So that's
Yeah.
I think all of whom were there by certainly mid 80s when I was
Yeah.
except Ramani. Some light on formation of the management department.
Yeah. Somewhere towards the late 90s, the discussion had started. It was more about whether we should start an MBA program. And it was in a very different thinking from today's. What I had heard was that the MHRDA had said there's a large demand for MBAs in the country, but it is terribly expensive for us to start so many IIMs. IITs have the infrastructure, so why don't IITs get into MBA education? And by then a few IITs had started. Kanpur and Madras IIT were the late entrants into MBA program. So by about 2001, we had decided that we would close down the MTech Industrial Management program and launch the MBA program. I think August 2001 or so. In fact, that year also we had a water scarcity and late reopening. The inaugural of the program happened in the ICSR auditorium. 2001 was when the MBA program is launched. And then we made the case for formation of a department, which was unanimously, I think, supported by the Senate. But then a department has to be created by an act of the parliament. It required parliamentary clearance. So all that happened around 2004. I think management studies and biotechnology happened approximately around the same time. These two departments were created.
So any special role played by any individual, could it be director or others who enabled this formation to happen? Would you
the comments,
attribute any?
The starting of the MBA program had the full support of the then director, Sir Natarajan. And the creation of the department and all of that had the support of Professor Anant. And initially, we still continue to exist in the HSB only, the same building. After that, by then the new library building was coming up, the old library was being abandoned. So there was also the proposal to convert the old library building to a Department of Management.
So one thought, since we have talked about management department creation, now in building the department, particularly from adding faculty, how difficult was it to get good faculty who would have otherwise gone to a better institution? This would have really, worried you or whoever were at the helm of affairs.
See, I think all through the pull factor was the brand name of IIT. The additional pull factor could, for some of the colleagues, could have been the city of Chennai or Madras, whichever. That may not have motivated everybody to come here, but IIT had some attraction. Joining a Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, there would have been a reluctance. Starting of an MBA program would have given a little more motivation. Okay, I will have a meaningful role to play. People were willing to join. Once the department was created, I think
these were less of a problem.
Yeah. The other problem was, there was a time when, let us say, every department faculty strength was strictly legislated upon. And so whether it is taking research scholars or taking faculty members, it was also about will everybody get an equal share of the cake.
Right.
So we also had to worry about balancing the requirements of the humanities section, the social sciences section, the management section,
Right.
some of which was not always pleasant.
Right,
You know
right,
about that.
right.
So,
But now things are, the sharing problem is not so much a problem, because as long as you feel someone can be
Yeah.
taken, you can take. So anyway,
the constraints have largely gone out.
Gone.
A lot of the financial constraints have moved out, infrastructural constraints have gone off. I think the overall health of the institute is much better today. If anything, interaction amongst people might have come down over the years, and the reasons are obvious. It's a worldwide phenomenon, so you don't have to particularly blame IIT for that.
so two things come to my mind. One is which largely persists even today, but the kind of interaction you may have had with faculty in other departments. Was there opportunities for that? Nowadays we go for JEE, at least
No,
it gives
JEE
an opportunity to interact with others.
JEE existed even then. There was some other system which caused this interaction. Centralized invigilation. Entire seating and invigilation of the semester exams in
Right, so
particular
you meet more often.
was centralized. So I would end up in a department, in a branch, and with another colleague whom I have not met at all. And then we get to talk, and that is how it
But
was.
what about sitting in doctoral committee of other departments or vice versa?
It was there.
So
The
it was
system
there.
was there.
So there is that was there to give that
Yes, yes.
opportunity.
Right from the beginning, it was, as far as I know, it was 6 members in the doctoral committee, which had head of the department, guide,
Two from
two
inside.
from the department, and 2 from outside the department. That composition, I think, remained the same.
Very good. So the other thing that we all know about you is your closeness with students. It doesn't happen with everybody, even with good teachers, popular teachers. But
I think
your relationship with the student is
It
something.
probably had to do with the fact that when I was a PG student, I already had a lot of undergraduate friends. I was moving with them freely. So when I went to class, suddenly I could not change my role and start acting different. So I was just my natural self. So the friend continued to remain the friend. That's all. I couldn't be any different. So that way, almost throughout my service, I have not felt uncomfortable interacting with students. Subsequently, that's what I was assistant warden, so I interacted with the students a lot. Then somewhere in the mid 80s, I was head of the guidance and counseling unit. 80s was when the GCU
got formed.
was formed. A lot of discussions again, and that also I went through, let us say, iterations, trial and errors, some costly also. But,
You have
and
had very large number of masters and PhD students you have had as a supervisor. So can you tell something about the composition, anything, just the numbers part of it, how many you have guided so far, and you want to say something about your experience with as a guide, any outstanding thing you want
I
to
had
mention?
about exactly 20 PhD students, and the 20 happened after I retired. 3 or 4 of them finished after my retirement. I
About
had
17
to come and
before
finish
you
them.
finished.
Yeah.
That's a big
And,
number.
Yeah. MS was probably around 15 or so, because in later years what happened, a student would join for MS and then convert to PhD. That also happened. a couple of cases.
I have had the pleasure of having one student along with you,
Yeah,
Ganesh.
correct.
You have had co-supervision with others?
Yeah. I have had
Other
co-supervised, other mechanical engineering with Professor Shanmugam. I
Shanmugam,
had
okay.
a doctoral student. Yes.
And all your students are mostly in universities or industry, because they could go either
I
way?
think more on the academic side. Some are, it would be something like 60-40, 60% academics and 40% corporate. And
Mostly on the same production, or you have had any diversity?
there has been diversity.
Because we have worked on drugs.
See, my research was on a subject called inventory control. I didn't have much faith in the subject itself and its relevance as I moved into faculty and started guiding. So I almost have no student who worked on the same subject that I did my PhD in. Early years, it was largely on manufacturing systems, cellular manufacturing system,
right. I
flexible
remember that.
manufacturing system and all that. And after the 90s, that also changed. There was a period in between where, in 95 or so, I got to become professor. I thought I must help my younger colleagues. We were in the humanities department and there were very few students who were coming in for doctoral program. So, for the next 4-5 years, I did not take any doctoral students. I took master's students, but not for PhD. Then it revived in about 2001 also. Thereafter, I had a regular flow of doctoral students again. And by then, again, I had shifted to vehicle routing problems.
Right.
And the last 15 years or so, it was largely in the area of logistics, vehicle routing, then the freight train scheduling, convoy movement problem, supply chain management broadly is. The only common thing to most of these topics would have been they were combinatorial optimization problems. A few went out of that also. There was one in the very classical industrial engineering, ergonomics kind of area also. One or two went in that direction. And then there was one where I had a marketing co-guide, Professor Vijay Raghavan.
Yes.
One student like that. In fact, two students under our joint guidance.
But I think the other topics you mentioned are also the topics on which a larger number of people are working.
Yes, correct.
So that's a good group kind of thing. So I would like to now shift the direction of the conversation into something that on which you can talk a lot. That's about the music. So can you tell us about the story of the music club here, of which you were the founder and integral
part? No, I am not the founder.
Okay, so you tell the story. Yeah.
See, I came in August 1971. What I got to know was the music club started in October 1970 or so. And the early members who were actively associated with the music club were Professor M. Venugopal, Professor Sampath, Professor Narayan Rao, and then there was Professor V.S. Raju. Yes. Professor Raju was the first treasurer of the music club, Professor Narayan Rao was the secretary.
I see.
And it's also important to record that Professor Narayan Rao had a technical assistant, an STA by name Balasubramaniam, R. Balasubramaniam. He was the person who did most of the contacting of musicians and fixing up of concerts and all that. For some time, CLT was under renovation or it was taken over for air conditioning. It was not available to us. And they gave us a venue on the first floor of BSB, where subsequently the IBM 370 mainframe computer was located. So I've attended a couple of concerts there also. And even before I got associated with the music club, I think I got an invitation to perform in the music club, and that was at CLT. I remember that. And then gradually got into the committee, became a volunteer. And my association with Music Club has been from grassroots level, so I have gone around distributing circulars, spreading carpets on the floor, all kinds of odd jobs that I have done. Subsequently, went on to become joint secretary, later on
So
president.
this would be like a seasonal, like
Yeah.
we have even now, not so regular every month or something.
No, at all times what we used to do is this. We keep track of the academic calendar. So at the end of a
Squeeze.
periodical cycle, when there is a break, we try to have concerts so that students will be able to attend. The student membership was much higher in those days.
I see.
A concert by M.D. Ramanathan would have at least half the CLT full.
Has M.D. Ramanathan come here?
Huh.
I see.
Amongst the stalwarts who have come into the, I think the very first concert was Ramnath Krishnan.
Oh.
The second was Lalgudi Jayaraman. These happened before I came in. And then we brought in Chembai Vaidyanatha Bhagavatar. I remember twice I got Alathur Srinivasa Iyer, with Palgad Mani Iyer on the Mridangam. And then Shemmangudi has sung here once with T.N.
KVN.
Krishnan and Palgad Raghu. KVN many times.
Many times.
Yeah.
I see. MS?
MS we couldn't get. D.K. Patamal has sung quite a few times, so has MLV. So MS Subbulakshmi was the only person.
These are all 70s.
Yeah. Balamurali Krishna we have brought in, Chitti Babu, Balachandar we
So
got
all
in
the.
once. Mandolin Srinivas.
Okay.
I still remember somewhere in 1988 when Mandolin Srinivas played.
Mandolin, I remember, 88, I was very much here.
The CLT was so packed
Yes.
that except the place where the artist sat, there were
Everywhere.
people everywhere in the CLT. It was jam-packed.
So you are, of course, you are even otherwise had a network of relationship with many musicians.
Yeah,
This-
actually, I would say that working for the music club also helped me network with musicians.
so that
It
was what
both
I
ways.
am going. I
Yeah.
was going to ask.
So that helped me build a contacts, rapport with the musicians, and that came in
How did
handy
you-
during difficult times. For example, when I went off campus, 79 to 88, I was not on campus. I was coming from outside. So at that time, I was not so actively associated with music because there were others who were living on campus who could run it. When I came back in 88, then there was this talk, and music club, they said, was not in good shape. It was struggling and so on.
Financially or?
Yeah, financially
How-
also.
I was just going to ask all these big personalities you brought, Sanmanam for them.
Yeah.
What's the
See,
kind
the
of scale,
remuneration, again, if you look at value of money, in the 70s, the membership was the order of 2 rupees per head, 3 rupees per head, something like that. And I could finish a senior concert in 300 rupees.
all
Altogether.
except the transport.
Yeah, I mean, if I pay 300 to the main artist, he would distribute it amongst the accompanying artists, and that was all that is required because, as I said, the value of money was much
That's a
higher.
3-hour concert.
3 hour con. Those were not problems then. And yes, we have lived through the inflation and
Fine.
been periodically raising the subscription rates, raising the
But it gives an
remunerations.
idea of
Yeah.
kind of budget you had to manage. still.
But there were times when we had to plead with the musicians saying we can't afford so much, so please accept what we have to offer and so on. And I still remember 88 when I took over, and by then remunerations had gone up. I phoned up the famous flautist, Sri Ramani,
Ah,
and said, "Sir, Saranagati,
you understood.
my club is not I can pay you only this much, but please don't say no." And he accepted. I still remember T. Rukmini was the violin accompaniment. And after that, we gradually, within about 6 months, I was able to get Mandolin Srinivasan.
So when you
But
say
the significant change was, after that, the role of student volunteers increased significantly from that point of time. And I gave them a free hand. The discussion was only whom to invite. So up to that point, I would be there, part of the discussion. I gradually encouraged them to contact musicians, fix up dates, coordinate, etc. What happened as a result was, see, the students were a floating population. Year after year, the office bearers would change.
So get them the second year.
Depending on the student capability, attitude, etc., the performance of the music club also would fluctuate year to year. But most of the years, I think I had a good bunch of students. So, and
any unusual thing happened, like with musician not turning up or CLT?
We've had, for example, we fixed the concert and had to call it off because of a heavy downpour. That's happened more than once. One concert I remember was Vedavalli.
I think we ourselves would not come in. So in the light of it, you might you would call them and say not.
No, they pleaded, let's not have the concert. Right. It's raining too heavily. So those kind of things have happened.
Were you recording everything? Even with then, when did the recording idea start? I think we can have a good archives of that, even for the last 10 years.
It was only late Professor Swaminathan of Physics Department who took an active interest in recording. So during his period, concerts were recorded, but unfortunately, since he died a bachelor, we don't know where those.
But what about from late 80s onwards, when you were?
We were not recording because.
In the last 10 years, even then. Oh.
See, recording was not a practice because artists could object to it. I mean, I know some unauthorized recordings have happened, but we generally did not encourage recording.
I see.
In fact, there was another interesting. We also did not encourage these sudden requests and slips coming in, except at the fag end of the concert.
Right.
And some of them were irrelevant, untimely, and embarrassing also. For example, somebody towards the end of the concert will say, "Can you sing Endaro Mahanubhavalu?" or Vatapi Ganapati.
Okay.
So, these were the kind of requests which, if the slips come to me, I would sit in the first row, just squeeze the paper, not pass it on at all.
Right.
It happens. I mean, I don't blame a member of the audience for being ignorant, but I also request
somebody has to take
that member understand
yes.
that all requests cannot be forwarded indiscriminately. So
what about your sports interests? Have you played, been part of any team of cricket or?
The only time I think within the hostel, some intra-hostel, a little bit of cricket.
Six-a-side or something?
Little bit of cricket within the hostel, just once. But otherwise, largely inactive in sports.
As a result of being part of this campus, like you are any specific music you would have anyway pursued, but as a result of being in this campus, other than music, any special interest that grew out of being in the campus?
I would say there has been a lot of learning about political systems, economics, and the left view and the right view, and all of those. And within the hostel, we would have these arguments.
Views.
And I still remember what a friend and I confessed. As a result of all these endless arguments I had, he was not as hard a leftist as he was in the beginning, and I was not as hard a rightist
as you were.
All of us kind of opened up. And by the time I left the place, I've come to the conclusion that there is nothing like right or wrong. And value judgment itself has become a big question mark. Each of us has our own baggage. With that, we try to judge.
What about your experience as a resident of this campus? I mean, you have lived in the campus for nearly 25 years.
Both The hostel sector and
Yes.
later outside?
No, I'm talking as a faculty
Yeah.
and the residential section.
No, there's one point which I must mention here. At all times I've noticed that if there were maintenance issues in the hostel, the engineering unit did not respond well. I'm sorry to say this. For leaking taps or let's say lighting not working, whatever. The repairs or the replacements did not happen quick enough. And I think this quite a few wardens of later years also would testify to. That
This was
always
in the 80s, 90s?
Yeah.
And things.
And yeah, see, it is like this. Attitudinally, we have this problem. And a couple of times I've told the staff also, not just engineering unit staff, that you all think students are a burden, students are a nuisance. But remember, we won't exist here if the students did not come.
Right.
Right? So why don't you?
I think this is the point you made in the
My farewell speech.
farewell speech as well.
Now coming to the residence side, I spent about 8 years on Adayar Avenue, D30. It was a new block.
I was your neighbor.
Yeah. And then we moved to Lakeview Road. And there were some interesting wildlife scenes also. In the, let's say, more crowded Adayar Avenue itself. There was a bird which I have never seen, but early morning it would sing, and it would sing to tune, and that was far more musical than the much more, let's say, the popular cuckoo.
This was the early morning, 4
Yes.
o'clock, no?
See,
Right.
I even remember sometimes the bird would go out of tune, correct itself, and then sing again.
I see.
But I still don't know what the bird looks like, and I don't know if the bird still goes around. Another bird which I have seen, which, in those days and subsequently I never got to see, was a white bird with a long tail shaped like a W. And the tail would, let's say,
Huge.
move beautifully when the bird flew. And that bird again I could never see. A third interesting wildlife experience, there were cockroaches in my house.
Ah.
I pushed them out of the balcony, and as the cockroach was falling, it was still alive. A kingfisher swooped down and caught the cockroach mid-air.
Okay.
So
That's what they are good at.
scenes which we could not film. So quite a few interesting experiences. After moving into Lakeview Road, the interesting thing is quite a few instances of snakes coming into the house. Once when I had gone out, there was a snake sitting inside my veena.
Oh.
And my wife noticed it. She called the security. And by then we had become so friendly with snakes that her fervent plea was, please do not kill the snake.
Just enable them to
Yeah,
get out.
I remember another day early morning, I got up, opened the front door, and there was a snake. It saw me and quickly
Went away.
crossed the road and went to the other side.
But I think you had the lake
And
nearby. Though you suffered, I think
The
few
flooding
times,
has happened
but
quite a few
I think
times.
the lake's presence near your home
Yeah, it was
is something
great.
unique.
Yeah. And sometimes we used to go stand near the lake, and there would be a gentle breeze blowing, pleasant viewing. And there were interesting birds which come to the lake also. The black cormorant, I have seen a painted stork. More interesting than the lake is the swamp in front of my house, which would be filled with water during the rainy season.
Right.
Some of the birds
Will come
would
there.
nest during that season. By the time the water dries up, the chicks would have flown off. So they were safe. And another instance I remember was, we saw a snake which had caught a kingfisher. The kingfisher was still in its mouth, and my neighbor, Dr. Mahaseshtai, asked, can't we do something to save the poor bird? Nothing.
You witnessed
Yeah.
it happen.
So these are all part of living with the wild. In fact, in my early years, I have seen this also. Monkey plucking some fruit and throwing it down for the deer to eat. The deer looked up, the monkey responded. They had also lived in harmony. I don't know how often we get to see that. But conspicuously, I could see that the blackbird population was much higher in the early years, and I've seen them hop around, fantastic sight. That did not happen. Somewhere in between, there was an obsession for fencing all the departments.
Most of it is removed now.
Yeah. Subsequently, the fences have gone, but there is still, let us say, a nostalgic recall of a campus which had fewer buildings, fewer people, fewer cars. There were hardly 5 cars on the campus in the 70s when I came in. And there were more bird species. Many of those birds, I mean, I did not know the name, I can't identify them, but a lot of those birds have vanished. And of course, one of the wildlife experts had said, see, it was less wooded then. So what Mr. Ranjit Daniel apparently has said is that as the trees grew up and formed a canopy, the monkeys could dart across over the trees, and they did a lot of damage to the birds' nests. The birds lost their comfort zone. So isolated trees are better than the canopy formation, is what seems to be the lesson. Of course, it's too late.
So one question I want to pose, sort of counterfactual now. We still follow broadly 8 to classes begin by 8 o'clock and finish for the students. And I personally even now prefer early the class the better. Of course, from the students' point of view, it's all changing. You know, they would like to see even at least 10 o'clock, if not 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock or later. What would be your reaction today, you know, of seeing the class 8 o'clock, half of whom not had a bath, not had a breakfast, not had slept? Would you have enough enthusiasm? This is a
see, morning bath was a casualty even in those days.
Right.
The moment you get the freedom of a hostel life, bath is your option. Okay.
Yeah.
So, or how often you wash your clothes, etc.
That's okay.
Right.
Second is about
personal hygiene,
skipping the breakfast and not having had sleep. So it's really you need enormous motivation yourself to to motivate. How would you respond to this situation?
What I would say is this. The student attitudes have also changed. There are possibly more students who are a little more serious about engineering than there are now. Today it is simply a social pressure which pushes a lot of reluctant students into the IIT system.
So as a teacher, how would you handle an 8 o'clock class in this kind of ambience? That's the.
I would go by.
So as a lesson for others.
I would go by what our former director, Professor Anand, used to say. There are a few front benchers who are motivated and who listen to you. You lecture to them and come out. Don't worry about the rest. And I've seen a clear 3-way classification. Front benchers who are interested, motivated, will listen to you, will not sleep. And then there is a middle row, which is okay. And then there is a last 1/3. They won't come with notebooks. They'll just come there and let's say put their heads down and sleep. They're there only for the attendance, nothing else. They're not bothered. And in a class of 80, it doesn't make sense for me to bother.
Only if they bother others.
See, that's one thing is, I've never had this problem of indiscipline in the form of students shouting or chatting or disrupting my class. Yes. That doesn't happen in IIT.
Yes.
I've heard that also used to happen in the 60s. So student indiscipline of that kind has not been there. Student indifference, plenty.
That's
right. So indifference you have to put up with, because India, we still don't have a society which allows every kid to choose what she wants to do. Right? It is still pushed by society, status, prestige and so on. So,
anything else you would like to talk about as part of your journey that would otherwise not reach others?
yeah, on the culture side, 70s was a time when student competitions at an inter-hostel level would bring full crowds to OIT or CLT, wherever that was. 74 was when, before 74 it was the intercollegiate stuff also. There was no Mardi Gras. Local colleges would be invited to participate. There would be about 10 or 12 colleges, and the same format as inter-hostel. You are given 45 minutes. You do whatever you want with your talent. And this incident I have narrated before. Madras Medical College was on stage, and their MC announced that somebody is going to play Western classical music on the violin. The moment they said classical, a lot of the students started walking out. This person came and started playing. The people who walked out came back. You know who the violin player was? L. Subramaniam.
Oh.
So,
they didn't know who was L. Subramaniam.
No.
They just heard and
Yes.
that's it.
L. Subramaniam was not known.
Right.
But after he played, he had not become such a big name. They were playing as a trio Carnatic concerts, he and his brothers.
But the power of his
yeah.
music. Fantastic.
So, that was an interesting incident. And after Mardi Gras started and we classified the events into, let's say, there were separate competitions for classical music, light music, Western music, debate, everything was.
So, you were actively involved in that part of the Mardi Gras?
Mardi Gras, a couple of years as coordinator and all that.
No, but you would actively engage,
yes,
being
that's what
part of Mardi Gras.
I mean, classical music shows at least I have been coordinator. Even light music 1 year I think I was the coordinator. And interesting thing was through the 70s the audience turnout was good. Later years I found that even in a small classroom you don't get anybody other than the participants and people who come with them. The interests have completely changed. Of course, TV came somewhere in the late 70s, it was black and white TV, and then it was color TV, and afterwards at times nobody stopped, let's say, watches TV also now. TV has come in and gone out. TVs exist in common rooms possibly, except for some interesting cricket matches or so. I doubt if people watch the TV in the common room. So, a lot of things have changed.
So, several of your students, particularly the BTechs who are now abroad, I'm sure you are in touch with many people, but would you say you are still in contact with a large number of them?
No, it's only a small number. Social media has helped. Facebook,
through the social
through Facebook.
How many of them are in academics?
I think amongst those who went to US, fairly good number.
30, 40 of them would be in academics.
Yeah.
And they had passed through either the management department or IM department?
No.
Or not necessarily?
Mostly undergrads.
Whom
I
who went
taught.
to, yes,
Yeah.
okay.
A couple of them have gone on record saying I was inspired to pursue operations research because of Professor so and so.
Yeah.
So,
Very good. So, thank you very much for sharing with us your
pleasure.
long journey. I am sure those who have an opportunity to listen and watch the video later on will have much insights into the campus life of through you, the campus and the institution.